Okay, so let's get started with general ecology in this carrying ecology course. Because of the nature of ecology and carrying ecology, I'm going to spend the next several lessons going over some of the basics, just so I can make sure that everybody's on the same page. You may know some of this stuff as you have gone through other ecology courses or biology courses, so treat this more as a review. But if you haven't taken any other ecology courses or it's been a really long time, this way we can make sure everybody has the same basic knowledge, so when I start throwing all these new terms and stuff at you, you're not completely overwhelmed. Don't want to do that. All right. So let's talk about ecology. You'll find that as I go through these lessons, I like giving you the etymology of words. I found throughout my long years of schooling that this has made it easier for me to remember the meaning of the words. So let's start here. So ecology is from the Greek word okios, which means house or surroundings. And the suffix ology means the study of. In fact, this is the same root word for economy. So ecology and economy. So economy means the management of the household. Ecology is basically we are studying our surroundings. So ecology is the body of knowledge that is concerned with the economy of nature, the investigation of the total relations of the animals, both to its organic and to its inorganic environment. It's the study of the processes regulating the distribution and the abundance of organisms and the interactions among them. It's really how these organisms in turn mediate the transport and transformation of energy and the matter in the biosphere. So you can see how there's a whole bunch that goes into this. Really, I mean, it's the study of the ecosystem structure and function. When you look up the definition of ecology, you can just go on and on and on, making it sound more and more sciencey. But to be as simple as possible, ecology is simply the scientific study of the interactions between organisms and their environment. So this is what we're talking about. How everything fits together, how the living organisms interact with other living organisms, with the plants, with the trees, with the ground, with the climate, with all of that together, how it all interacts. So ecology, when you think about it, is overwhelming. It is everything. Okay, now, there are a few things that ecology is not. So let's talk about that just very briefly. Ecology is not an environmental science. So it's not the specific study of a human's effects on natural systems. It's not environmentalism. It's not how we activate, or it's not aimed at activism, at improving the environment. It's not resource management. It's not how we regulate wildlife, fisheries, soil resources, or forestries. It's bigger than that. It's everything. So you're going to hear people, when you start reading about ecology, when you start looking at videos and all that about ecology, they're going to say, oh, I'm an ecologist, I'm an environmental activist, I'm an ecologist, I do this thing. That's a subset of ecology. So it's bigger than all of these things put together, and it's more than that. It encompasses a whole bunch of sciences. So ecology as a science is a process. It's not the knowledge it generates or the use of that knowledge to do something in the world. It is a study. It's an ongoing thing. So that's why it is so difficult to really give you a simple definition of ecology. And when you talk to someone who's an ecologist, they are looking at many, many different systems. It is really hard to be a full-fledged, just overarching ecologist because you just scratch the surface of things. Instead, you tend to focus in on particular aspects, which we'll talk about in just a minute. Now, when we talk about ecology, much of our knowledge about the nature of the world is well established. So ecology itself really began when we first started observing and recording our surroundings. And that started when we evolved eyes, when we evolved communication. And so we have been studying ecology as a species since the beginning of being a species. It's just our observations about the world around us. And as I go through these lessons, I'm going to be going over some of the more well-established concepts in ecology, just to give you a firm grounding. But know that, I'm going to barely scratch the surface of these things. To become a true expert in ecology is going to take years because it is so overarching. It is so encompassing. And really, any aspect of science is going to have some aspect of ecology in it. I want you to keep in mind that we consider facts, what we consider facts in ecology, therefore, are things that are confirmed by observation, they're confirmed by experiment, and they're confirmed by modeling. And I'm going to go through the idea of the scientific method and how we know what is what in a few lessons. However, because ecology is such a huge science, our understanding of many of these issues is incomplete and imperfect. So don't let this sully your idea of ecology. And this is a trap that I've noticed a lot of people who aren't scientists, a lot of people who aren't studying ecology fall into. Here I am on my soapbox. I'll do this every once in a while. You know, I'm here recording videos for you, and I'll just get on a soapbox. So there are people out there who just say things like, well, we don't know everything, therefore this is a useless science. That's not true. Scientists, we're constantly reviewing our knowledge. We're adding to it. We're refining it. We're changing our ideas based on new facts, new methods of analysis, new methods of recording information. And so you're going to find that as you go through learning about ecology, there are going to be areas we just don't know a lot about. I want you to take these areas as opportunities. The fact that you're in this class tells me you're interested in ecology in general, and specifically in carrion and how it affects the world around it and how it is affected by the world around it. So you have the opportunity then to go out and add to this body of knowledge. This is what being a scientist is all about, really. It's about going out and finding new information in the world, and it is fantastic. So you've enrolled in this class about ecology. Why in the world do we need to study such a complex, such a ginormous science? Well, first and foremost, we study it out of curiosity. You may have noticed that this is how we learn, right? This is humans in general are curious beings. So we just love wondering about things. We want to explain things. We want to know why stuff happens. Ecology encompasses everything around us, how and why it works, and where we fit into this world. Can you imagine anything more intellectually stimulating than this? It has the potential to answer all manner of interesting questions, and you have the potential to find areas that no one has explored and answer the questions for yourself. That is amazing, and that's why I love ecology in general. Second, ecology has important impacts on your daily life. It's literally about your surroundings. So knowing how it works and how everything affects everything else is extremely important. Third, we have known for a long time that the world works according to specific rules, things we call natural laws. Ecology is a way for us to understand at least some of those natural laws, things like physical properties of matter, energy transfer, cause and effect of various actions. These natural laws impose limitations on the interaction of all organisms, including you and me, and how these organisms interact with the living and non-living environments. So if we understand these laws, we can actually use this knowledge to apply this information in a variety of ways. I mean, humans have a huge impact on the global ecosystem, right? So studying ecology allows us to predict how our actions are going to play out in the future and allows us to change the outcome. Really, science is a way of telling the future, and I love telling this, especially to new budding scientists. Once we understand how things interact, we can predict what is going to happen under a variety of circumstances. And as we go through these lessons, I'm going to mention things like modeling. Modeling is just a scientific term for telling the future. We create ways of plugging in different scenarios and variables and things, and we see what happens. This helps us make the best decisions possible so we can have the outcome that we want. Okay? In order to do this, we need to know everything possible about the system, about ecology. So I like to say that science is akin to magic. You're going to hear me saying this a bunch. We can do these amazing things with it as long as we know the rules. Ecology encompasses this idea to a T. Now, because ecology is such a huge subject, when you think about it, we have to break up ecology into all manner of different subgroups so we can do meaningful research. We can get meaningful knowledge. Any basic ecology course or textbook is really just going to scratch the surface when it comes to all the knowledge we have and all the things we do and we don't know. You are in a carrion ecology course, so we're going to spend the bulk of this class talking about carrion and how it interacts with its environment. Before we get into that, though, I want to give you an idea of some of the other types of ecology out there so you can start exploring on your own. So let's go through, these are some of the major types that we're using that you're going to see papers about that I may allude to throughout the rest of these lessons. Know that, again, this is just some portion of it. There are going to be other bits and bobs of ecology that you're going to find. So let's start with applied ecology. Applied ecology is a field of study that uses ecological principles to maintain conditions necessary for the continuation of present day on Earth. Basically, this is what keeps us alive. Okay, all those people that are working to stop climate change, to clean up the oceans, to work to save endangered species, they're all working in applied ecology. They are taking their knowledge and applying it to the real world. Industrial ecology. This is the design of the industrial infrastructure such that it consists of a series of interlocking quote-unquote technological ecosystems. So this is a bunch of these technological ecosystems interfacing with global natural ecosystems. Okay, so industrial ecology takes the pattern and processes of the natural ecosystem as a design for sustainability. It represents basically a shift in paradigm from conquering nature to becoming one with nature. So it's this sort of, highfalutin, if you will, thought process of, hey, nature has figured this thing out for a long time. Let's mimic that. Let's become part of that. Let's use what nature has done through millions of years of evolution and apply it to our own technological ecosystem. So that's industrial ecology. Ecological engineering. So unlike industrial ecology, the focus of ecological engineering is on the manipulation of natural ecosystems. So we do this for our own purposes. So say using small amounts of supplemental energy to control systems in which the main energy drives are still coming from non-human sources. It is the design of new ecosystems for human purposes. It's using self-organizing principles of the natural ecosystem for our own regions. So the popular definition of ecological engineering is the design of human society with the natural environment for the benefit of both. You'll hear people talking about ecological engineering in just this way. Okay. Ecological economics. So same idea. It's integrating ecology and economics in such a way that economic and environmental policies are reinforcing rather than mutually destructive. Okay, so in this case, it is things working together. All right. Urban ecology. For ecologists, urban ecology is the study of ecology in urban areas, specifically the relationships, the interactions, the types, the numbers of species found in urban habitats. Also, it's the design of sustainable cities and urban design programs that incorporate political, infrastructure, and economic considerations. So really, that's industrial ecology, ecological engineering, ecological economics. All those things work together to form urban ecology. Conservation biology. This is the application of diverse fields and disciplines to the conservation of biological diversity. So people who are getting into saving certain animal species or saving plants or saving different environments, they're in conservation biology. Restoration biology. This works with conservation biology, but it's the application of ecosystem ecology to the restoration of deteriorated landscapes. It's an attempt to bring back the original state of a landscape as much as possible. For example, certain prairies are being completely destroyed for various reasons, for everything from climate change to industrialization to people moving into the area. So people are trying to bring back that prairie through this restoration biology. Landscape ecology. This is concerned with spatial patterns in the landscape and how they develop, especially with an emphasis on the roles of disturbance and human impacts. It's a relatively new branch of ecology, actually, and it employs global information systems. The goal is to predict the responses of different organisms to changes in the landscape and to ultimately facilitate ecosystem management. So what we do is we look at what kind of impact is it going to be when we make a new city in an area, or when we turn an area from a natural system into a managed system, what's going to go on there? So landscape ecology is really, really important. And there's a lot of people going into it right now. Theoretical ecology, oh man. This is the developmental of ecological theory, usually with mathematical, statistical, and or computer modeling tools. So remember that thing I said about ecology being magic and the ability to predict things? That's where theoretical ecology comes in. You take all this knowledge and you plug it into a computer and you try to predict the future under certain circumstances. Quantitative ecology. This goes with theoretical ecology, but it's the development of mathematical and statistical tools to interpret and analyze ecological data. So these, again, are theoretical people, mathematicians, statisticians, going through and trying to figure out, okay, we have this glut of information from all of this research. How in the hell do we interpret it? So that's quantitative ecology. Microbial ecology. We're going to be talking about part of this because microbes are an important part of carrion ecology, but microbial ecology is the ecology of microorganisms. So we're looking at bacteria, viruses, that sort of thing, and how they interact with the world. Functional ecology. Functional ecology is the study of the roles or functions of certain species, of certain groups, of certain populations, and that what they do in an ecosystem. So things like decomposers or producers or predators. So you've heard all those terms before, and we'll talk a little bit about that. But the functional ecology is the idea of what is your function in this world. Finally, disease ecology. This is becoming more and more common, but this is the study of species interactions and the abiotic components of an environment that affect patterns and processes of disease. As you might imagine, a lot of people are worried about this. How are diseases spread? Where are they reservoired? Where are they found? How do they stay in the environment? And how do they go from animal to animal, from person to person, from plant to plant? So this is just a very brief sampling of some of the aspects of ecology. Keep in mind, there are way more subdisciplines when it comes to ecology, but these are the ones that you're going to likely run into out in the wild, out when you start reading and when you start doing your study. These are the ones you're going to notice in the news more and more often as you start getting into ecology. So I want you to sort of have a handle on these things. Now, you're going to be learning all manner of new terms in this course, and I'm going to be using these words over and over and over again. You may have noticed as I was talking about these different types of ecology, I use things like ecology, biotic, abiotic, ecosystem, climate, habitat, etc. So I'm going to finish up this first lesson by going through some of the major words and their definitions. Hopefully, this isn't the first time you've heard every one of these words. Maybe one or two will be new, but I want at least one of these words to be a review. So I'm going to be going through these definitions several more times in class, but since repetition is key, I'm going to just start here. Now, let's start with the basics. I'm going to remind you of the word you just learned a few minutes ago, the word ecology. This is the study of organisms and their interrelationships with the environment, both the biotic and abiotic. So, really simplistic version of ecology there, right? It's just everything. Okay. Now, when I say the words biotic and abiotic, the biotic environment, these are factors that are or were living in an ecosystem. Things like animals and plants and insects and bacteria, fungi, even things that are dead, they used to be living. So they are the biotic things in the environment. The abiotic environment, these are factors in the environment that are not or never were alive. So things like rocks, gases, water, the sun, minerals, temperature, the wind, all those sorts of things that are going to affect things out in the world, but they're not alive and have never been alive. So both these biotic and abiotic things work together in something we call an ecosystem. So the ecosystem, this is an interacting system or a group of biotic and abiotic factors that work together. It consists of groups of organisms and their non-living environment within a specific boundary. So when we talk about an ecosystem, you can talk about a very, very small ecosystem, like the ecosystem of your backyard. Right? So that's all the biotic and abiotic things just within your fence line. You can also talk about a region of a world. You can talk about a particular biome, a particular area, the desert, right? The rainforest. That's an ecosystem. So it's these sort of almost artificially defined boundaries where all these different groups of organisms and biotic and abiotic factors work together in concert, and they might fight against each other, they might prey upon each other, but it's all together in an ecosystem. Now, the climate, this is the overriding factor that determines the general nature of an ecosystem. It's the weather conditions that prevail in an area in general or over a long period of time. You might define it as a region with a particular prevailing weather condition. So, for example, if a climate in a particular area is always hot and dry, that's going to affect that ecosystem. You're going to have soil that is really sandy. The plant and the animals and other life are going to be adapted for survival in a desert-like area. If the climate is hot and moist, then there's going to be a lot of trees, a lot of plant growth, and the animals are going to be adapted to exploiting those plants. If the climate is cool and moist, we're going to see different types of plant growth and different types of animals and insects exploiting these plants. So the climate of the area is something that significantly affects everything within that area. Now, all of the organisms within an ecosystem live within a particular habitat. A habitat is the natural home or the environment of an animal, of a plant, of an organism in general. The habitat is actually created by the interaction between biotic and abiotic factors within an ecosystem. Okay, so when we talk about an organism's habitat, it's basically all these things working together where an organism can live. Within a particular organism's habitat, the organism will deal with survival. It's trying to live. So it needs to fight off predators and parasites and things. It needs to survive disease. It needs to find food and water and shelter. So all of those things put together, each organism is going to confront this challenge of survival in a different way. A niche is how an organism occupies this habitat. It's the sum of all the ways it utilizes the resources of its environment. So I say niche. You may also hear it pronounced niche. You can pronounce it however way you want. I say niche. Now, it's basically the match of a species to a specific environmental condition. So the niche describes how an organism or a population responds to the distribution of resources, to the distribution of competitors, and how it in turn alters the different factors in its environment. So for example, let's say an organism may grow really quickly to take up a lot of resources when there are no other organisms around. But when other things, other animals or plants get in the way, it's going to alter the way that it grows. Or it's going to do something like start producing toxins to kill off its competitors. It may hide from predators or parasites. It may try to eat other organisms in the environment. Or it may only feed on one particular part or a plant of an animal. All of these things determine its niche. So the type and the number of variables comprising the dimensions of an environmental niche vary from species to species. The relative importance of the environmental variables for a particular species, that varies according to the geographic location and the biotic factors in the environment. So the niche of a particular organism is going to change from place to place, from region to region, from climate to climate. Now, you're going to see in the news and in people who haven't studied ecology nearly as much as you have now, they tend to get the word habitat and the word niche mixed up, or they use them interchangeably to mean the same thing. They're not the same thing. The habitat is a place, while the niche is a pattern of living. You can think of it like the habitat is your address and the niche is your job or your occupation. So a place versus what you do. So if two organisms have the same habitat or similar niches, they're going to compete with each other over available resources. They're going to have to compete over food, over water, over shelter. So when we talk about competition, competition is the struggle between two organisms within their habitat. If a species can avoid competing, they will coexist. If they continue to compete, one will eventually drive the other out of the habitat, unless one or both are able to change their niche, change their job within that habitat. This is the concept we call niche partitioning. So different species can do different things will do things in a slightly different way, sort of to ease up on that competition. To give you an example of niche partitioning, there are several species of insects that feed on the same flower. Now, this should be a ridiculously competitive situation, right? Except they've broken up that flower into specific areas. One species is only going to feed on the petals of the flower. Another species is only going to feed on the pollen. A third is only going to feed on the leaves. They've partitioned this flower out to lower the competition and increase the likelihood of survival for everyone. This is niche partitioning. So notice they have different jobs. They're in the same habitat on that flower, but one is going to feed on the pollen. Its job is to feed on the pollen. One feeds on the petals, one feeds on the leaves. They've partitioned out that niche. All right, so that's enough for now. That's a lot for this first lesson. We're going to spend the next several lessons going into more information on general ecology, on the scientific method, and some of the larger concepts to get you prepped for how carrion interacts with the world. Let me know if you have any questions.